You're about to hear from Adam Torres, a guy who's recorded over 6,000 podcast interviews and still manages to do 12 a day. In this episode of Scaling Up Not Giving Up, we talk about how he overcame serious self-doubt, including doing 1,500 interviews before he ever turned a camera on, and how he built a global media business without outside investment. It's a conversation about obsession, sustainability, and what it really takes to build a business around your strengths, even when the world says it doesn't make sense. I'm Richard Lee, and this is Scaling Up Not Giving Up. Let's dive into it. Adam, first, thank you so much for being here. Would you just introduce yourself, give me a bit of a background about Mission Matters?
Well, first off, Richard, thank you for having me on Scaling Up, Not Giving Up. Big fan of getting into the show, into your work, what you're doing. I know you're out there, out in England. I'm in Los Angeles, so it's fun to be able to record worldwide and to collaborate. I know big podcasting audience in England and London, of course. So it's fun to get the message out. A little about myself. So I've been in media now for about 9 years. I've recorded over 6,000 podcast episodes. I host 8 shows. And the reason why I'm guesting and coming on shows is because I got a message. I want other people to share their stories. I want people to get off the sidelines. I want them to get in the game. I want them to share their message, share their stories in whatever format they want to, by the way. It can be podcasts, it can be books, it can be start your own Instagram channel. It can be, get involved in the discussion. So Mission Matters, the company, we're all about helping others amplify their stories. And really, we do that through a number of mediums, including book publishing, including podcast production, and really just putting out, I like to think, more content than any other company of our size on the planet. So as a media outlet. So that's who we are, and that's what we do.
First up, how on earth are you not exhausted? I feel exhausted just thinking about 6,000 interviews in 9 years. Just how?
I think God just wired me different. When you're walking in line with what you feel is your calling and what you're supposed to be doing, things are just different. I mean, for context, this year I'll do between 1,500 and 2,000 interviews this year. So, do I recommend that for any new podcasters? No. Do I recommend that for any podcaster? No. But if you're, I'm not into like the comparing yourself thing to other people, but it's just what I enjoy doing. I love it. Like I'll do today. I have, I think, 12 podcasts on the schedule, and my last one I just did was in Australia. Now I'm talking to you in England, and man, life is good. So I just think when somebody's walking in their calling, you can see it. It's different.
So, obviously, I guess for you, running a podcast business, appearing on the podcast is kind of working in the business. How do you have time amongst all of these interviews to work on the business and think strategically and think about what's next and to run the business?
And that's what I like about your show, by the way, Richard. So let me start one step further back just to so that people can understand, like, this was not the plan. When we think about scaling, when we think about like infrastructure, when we think about systems, my background's finance. I was in finance almost 14 years. So I had a financial advisory practice. I had my own company. The media side of things, this was not supposed to be a full-time gig for me. I was fairly successful in that other business. I managed a little over $200 million. So I've been working in it for a long time, a little over 14 years. So just for some context, when I got into the podcasting side of things, it was reluctantly. I wasn't going to it wasn't for a business or anything like that. I was publishing a book, and I had another, at this time, I won't even say co-founder because there was no company in the beginning. It was literally just a book, and his name is Shirag Sagar, and he came from the media business. And when I originally approached him, to get involved, he wanted a piece of the business, and I'm like, what business? I'm just doing a book. So he painted some of that vision of what was possible. And then when we started the podcast, really, I didn't have any plan on doing that many interviews. I was coming from the financial advisor mindset. And all I was thinking was, well, a lot of these people that I'm interviewing, I would love for them to be my clients. Right? Like I want to manage their money. So I just didn't want to tell a bunch of rich, wealthy, successful entrepreneurs no to coming on my show. So what happened is one day we had this backlog. Like we started with 1 episode a week, then it was 2 episodes a week, then it was like 1 a day, then it was a couple a day. And then we had this backlog of like 70 episodes or 80 episodes. And my team asked me, they said, well, what are we going to do? I'm like, well, I can't bring somebody on the show and say, okay, yeah, we're going to release your episode in 2 years. What are we going to do? So I told them, you know what, just release them all today. And they're like, what, today? And I'm like, all of them, and we'll just start from scratch and figure it out. So what we did on the back end is I built the company like a financial advisory practice. So at one point, we're much bigger than we were at that point, obviously now, but I had it down to how much each piece of content cost me to produce and put out there. So I had it down to like 28 cents per piece of content is what my math said. So I was literally to the penny trying to track what it took to put out a piece of content. And in doing that, we became really efficient and based off of the demand. So the demand, just for some context, we had over 30,000 people apply to be on the show last year. This year, we're thinking we'll have upwards that we're recording this in May. We're thinking we're on pace to get, 40, 50,000 people that apply to be on the show this year. So when you look at those things combined, it kind of started in the beginning of just building it like a financial advisory practice. Since I didn't know anything about media or podcast production or anything like that, I wasn't thinking about creativity and what's my show going to be about. I don't even know if you could call my early show, Richard, a podcast. You could call it Recorded Conversations with Adam on the Phone. That could have been the first show, whatever. I didn't know what I was doing. And I think part of the appeal possibly to the audience when I think about myself as a consumer of content, not a producer, was that I was authentic in saying I didn't know what I was doing. So sometimes I'd get these really big guests on and they'd be like, oh, I'm so happy. And I'm like, I said, they tell me there's a podcast, but I'm new. And so I feel like probably some of my younger, or not younger in terms of age, I just mean on my journey of podcasting, were much more forgiving because I was pretty authentic with just being blunt on I don't know what I don't know. Even I'll give you an example. In the first 300 episodes weren't even edited. Not in the front and the back. And I would say it. I would say it on this show. I'd be like, all right, I hope the audio is getting better, but I'm not editing this, but I bought a new headphone. So maybe that's going to make it sound better. So if you're listening to this, stick in there with me. I would say it on the show and the audience grew.
I guess like so much to delve into there. We need to talk about how like the systems that you have in place to run this business, do you know what I mean, and the structure and stuff. I guess, should we just talk a little bit about imposter syndrome first up? So you said those early episodes, there were conversations with you on the phone. I think you also said when I chatted to you another time that you didn't use your real name for hundreds of episodes.
Yeah.
You didn't turn your camera on.
Yeah.
Tell me about that and what that's like. Yeah. I think a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to imposter syndrome, even if they don't know what it's called at the moment. But they can really relate to a lot of it.
And I guess at that point, and I like the word imposter syndrome, but the only difference here was I wasn't even trying to be that because I didn't even know. I was so naive. So just for context, I was just scared, and it wasn't scared. It was I didn't know, like I didn't want to be in front of camera. So first 1,500 plus episodes, I wouldn't turn on a camera. If you just said like on the camera, like if you put it on the camera, I forget my name. Like I couldn't introduce myself. It would just like go off. Like I'd be like, oh my gosh, welcome to, it was just the whole like concept of being like polished and all this other stuff. It did not come naturally. So again, that's 1,500 plus episodes. And my very, very first show, I didn't even use my real name, as you mentioned. And that was, and that show was so.
What was the name you used out of interest?
So I had this, my financial advisory practice was located in Century City, California. And so for those of you that don't know what Century City is, it's adjacent to Beverly Hills. Most people have heard of Beverly Hills, and Century City, I like to think of as kind of like the little brother to Hollywood. So if you think about Hollywood, the movies, everything else. Well, in Century City, that's where all the lawyers, the wealth advisors, the funds, that's the backbone of Hollywood. So think about it. That's where all the paper pushers, I say affectionately, I was one of those when I managed money. So my clients would be like, celebrities, things like that. So that's the backbone of Hollywood. So I was very active in that community. So I got this nickname of Mr. Century City. So it started as a joke, and until it wasn't a joke and people actually called me it. So I said, when I was starting the show, I was like, oh, this would be funny. Let me call myself Mr. Century City. That's the nickname they have there. And I never really thought about like when you create something, I thought it was just going to be for my buddies. like just people that are around, like who's going to watch me on YouTube or who's going to watch this or who cares, right? But people cared. And that was kind of interesting to me because, again, I wasn't an intuitive content creator. So I was just thinking, just like Facebook, you have your couple Facebook friends and you put it out there. You know what I mean? Like that's what I was thinking. And then it started to grow and I got scared. And that was the very first show.
And how do you manage that self-doubt then in yourself now when you're in a business?
The good part about it is I've kind of grown and it continues, by the way. So now we're in talks with, like, as this scales up further, which is really interesting to me, is what's scaled up is now I'm in talks and I have people approaching me where I'll be in, like, literally interviewing presidents of countries and prime ministers and things like that. And when I think about it and when I think about working on my craft and the things I've done, it's kind of those are all new. Like I'll give you an example of like ways that new things keep happening, even if you're a veteran, so to speak, in a particular space. Here goes some firsts. First time that I did a live interview. The first time I did an interview in front of an audience of 100 people. The first time I did an interview in an audience of 1,000 people. The first time I hosted a panel. The
Do you
first
have
time that
self-doubt before these new things?
all of them, they're all different. They're all different. Have to. Every single one is different. Like every time. Think about this. So the first time I interviewed somebody in person, they didn't know it was the first time I was interviewing somebody in person. I'd already done 4,000 plus interviews. So they're looking at me. This guy's polished. They've seen me online. They've seen all these other things. After I was done with the interview, the person that was running the camera, she politely said to me, "Adam, you should maybe like introduce the person or at the camera." I just sat down and I was talking like I was hanging out with a friend because I didn't know any better. I forgot to do my intro. I didn't do any of the stuff I was supposed to do. And the guest didn't know. Right. But then I was like, oh, wait a minute. I forgot. Like, I'm doing an interview in person. I need to look at the camera a little bit and I need to, like, it's that type of show. Right. So that was new too. The first time I was on stage in front of a live audience, like all these different things, they're all new.
What about self-doubt in business?
On the business side of the things, I think the very fortunate thing that I've been able to do is the way our company is structured is, so for some people that are listening, they're like, well, how does this guy do all this? Like, it's impossible and then still run a company. Well, the way we structure the company is, again, we're a small company, a little over 30 of us. So when I use these big names, I don't mean it like we're that type of a big company, don't want to misrepresent. But when I think about like what Warren Buffett does, uh, Berkshire Hathaway, he acquires companies, right? He acquires them, and at this point, and he allows the CEOs that manage those companies to continue to do what they do great, managing those companies. Well, in my mind, I always kind of thought about it this way. We've heard this adage of if you can surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, like that'd be a good thing, right? Like in terms of business and other things. So the way I structure the company or that we, myself and the other co-founders structured it is my time is spent 70% in front of camera, 30% in actually running the company as CEO. And each one of our profit centers have executives that have run funded startups themselves and that they're self-sufficient and they're really good at what they do. So I am surrounded by people who have more experience in business than me. I still run strategy. I still am doing what my role and my part in leading the ship. But in the same sense, there's that test of being surrounded by really smart people that are good at what they do and that have vested interests in terms of, compensation, their profit center, they're competitive by nature, and also the benefit of like seeing a result. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think part of your view of being surrounded by these experts is because you have that bit of imposter syndrome and self-doubt yourself where you don't see yourself as one of those experts when you
No,
maybe are?
No, on the business side, I don't know. I wasn't. Now I'm better than where I started. But that one's not imposter syndrome. That's literally, they say you don't know what you don't know. Well, I was in finance. There's a very big difference between running a financial advisory practice, that's all I did. So was I an expert and was I really great at that? Absolutely. To accumulate, a couple $100 million, very few people will ever do that in assets under management. So in percentages, no. That's that I'm super confident in. Running a media company or even as an entrepreneur, that was new to me. So there are people that are better, and I've gotten better, obviously. Like that's not it. But imposter syndrome, no. If anything, I'm glad that I knew that I didn't know. Because if I wouldn't, I could have, wrecked that ship like many people do based on, trying to overcompensate for what they don't know, right? Like doing too much or
And
feeling
now
that the
do you
way they
think,
say it is right.
and now are you able to say you do know some of the stuff you didn't know? Or do you still have that self-doubt nagging in your head? There's people better than me still.
I'm a specialist in this business and in what we do. So for that, no. But if you were to tell me, and I've had people do this, by the way, like they're like, okay, so what's next, Adam? Like, are you going to run the next company or do this or that or whatever, like this? And you're like, or what do you see next? And I'm like, yeah, I'm not claiming I'm not claiming that I know how to run anything other than this business, because for this business and for what we do at Mission Matters, in that I'm an expert. Like in that I'm an expert. I live that, I breathe that, I understand every bit of it, that I'm an expert. But could I go into another company and do the same? I don't know. Like that's a what if. That's a definite what if. I'm not claiming I have the business acumen to do that, just to be blunt.
I think that's fair enough, and it's nice to hear someone say that, because I think, building one business is one thing, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of transferable skills. But actually, every business is different, and the landscape changes. Even if you were to build this exact same business again, now you would probably do it completely differently, because actually times have changed. What audiences want changes all the time, so you've constantly got to be iterating, haven't you?
Absolutely.
Give me an idea of the structure of the business now, and how it keeps things moving so quickly.
So in theory, one way to grow this right now would be to take on capital. There's demand, scale up, and really scale some things, hire some more salespeople, do some other things that you could do when bringing on capital. There's a case study for doing that, and we've had many people that have expressed interest in investing in what we've created. But we're not really in a rush to sell this thing or to do anything of that nature. So if we're not, then the concept is this, and it's a little bit different. And I'll give you the theory. I don't know if this is right, but it's my theory. I will be at the rate of content that I'm creating, between 1,500 to 2,000 episodes per year. In 10 years, I'll be approaching and or over 30,000 interviews. 10 years from now, I'm pretty young, so I'm still really young. I got a lot of life left in me. In theory, God willing, I don't walk out, so a tornado doesn't come get me, right? I don't know. In theory. So at that point, as an entertainer, I will have the largest public catalog of any entertainer in history. So if you think about that, the greats, and I'm not considering myself a great, by the way. So when I say these names, I'm not comparing myself, but I'm just saying who they are and like their catalogs. Johnny Carson, 30 years in the business, right? A Larry King, more than 30 years. Their catalogs are behind firewalls. You can't Google and find any Larry King interview he's ever done publicly. You can't. I will be the first person in history to do that. So that being said, what is the true value of that? I've already interviewed, I believe, the next Elon Musk. My catalog, the things that I've already done, and I'm just starting. I'm a baby in this business, by the way. I'm only 9 years in. The people that I name were in the business 30, 40 years. So like 40 plus years, depending on who we're talking about, Larry King or Oprah, they're still in the business, right? If you think about like an Oprah. So now, for myself and the other co-founder, if we're looking at the long term, and then if we look at the other things we've built, like the podcast network, so we own over 40 shows that we produce and distribute. If we look at our podcast agency, all of those, we're talking about over time already, right now, over a couple 100,000 pieces of content distributed, all leading back to our website and all of our content. So does it make sense to quickly scale, take on money, give a piece of that away when you know that long-term vision? This could be something that's never been done in history. So I don't know. But that's our theory. And so that's what we're doing. So we're not, and the only reason I bring that up is because when many people are thinking about scaling, I feel like they had, not saying you said this, but I feel like many of them feel they have to take on capital, and they get caught up in that. And that's okay if that's what you want to do. And if that's, what's going to help you get
And
over the
it's
hump,
the
or for
right
whatever
thing
reason.
to do, not just what
There
you
you go.
want to do. Because I think
Yes.
sometimes people think they want to do it, but it's just because everybody else has done it. And that
Yep.
doesn't mean the right thing. It's the same as like everyone wants an iPhone. and I use this as a really thingy example, actually an iPhone might not be right for you, an Android might be right for you, a
Yeah.
Samsung might be right for you, but I think sometimes people get a bit caught up in the, well, everyone's doing it, so I need to do it as well. And actually, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing for you and your business. And I think, that's a decision that should be revisited. You've made that decision now, Adam, but who knows where you'll be in 3 years' time. You may well decide at that point that scaling the business with external capital is the right thing to do. You may not, but it's like, just because you've made that decision doesn't mean it's a forever decision either.
Totally agree.
Because
And then there's
changes.
also totally agree. And there's also the case to be said that there will be other divisions. So for example, we just became partners on an entertainment debt fund. That's a whole different thing. That's a whole different entity. That's a whole different. So if that particular part of the business, there's interest and it makes sense to raise money and do some other things with it, then yeah, that's different. But in terms of like the overall brand, the emblem, probably just based on our competitive advantage of content. It's kind of like the way me and Chirac think about it is we've already gone through the pain. We're on the other side of the pain now. So it's like we could do other things. But I agree with you. It has to be revisited when necessary. You're totally right.
Why do you think being transparent is a really good way of leadership? You still there, Adam?
Yep, I'm here. You did freeze for a moment. You said, why do you think what? There you go.
But yeah, you froze as well. Yeah, why do you think being transparent is a good form of leadership?
I don't know that it is. Again, I don't put myself out there as a business expert. I'm not going to say that I know that it is. It's all I know. It's just what I know how to do. I'm kind of a one-trick pony on that. I mean, I will with some of my leadership team, and at this point, they know me obviously. Well, I shouldn't say obviously, but very, very well. And sometimes when I lead with I think the running joke is, boy, Adam, you missed your calling as a motivational speaker. And that's when I'm just about to tell them the truth.
And I think being transparent is really important and builds a lot of trust with your team, in my experience. But I think, like you say, you don't want to be telling confidential information out.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's what we're talking about here.
That's not what we are. I just wanted to say that so that just for anybody listening, they know that it's not irresponsible.
Probably a better way of phrasing it is being honest with people rather than being transparent. You're just being honest with people. And actually, people really appreciate it when you're honest. I always used to say this when I had the business. Actually, if something went wrong and you're going to go into an awkward conversation, an awful conversation with a client, they're going to want to yell at you. Do you know what? If you're just honest with them and you say, do you know what? This wasn't good enough. It was my fault. This is what we're going to do to stop it happening again.
Yeah.
There's a limit to how irate they can be with you as a person.
Yeah.
Because if you're just being honest and you're holding your hands up and you're accepting whatever the situation is, it's really unlikely someone's going to continue shouting at you for 20 minutes because usually people are shouting at you because they want to change your mind to their way of thinking. Well, if you're just being honest about the situation, they don't need to change your mind.
I love that you bring that up, Richard, because I was just talking about transparent internally, but externally, I'll take it one step further. Every other product other than books, we started in books.
We talked a little bit when we first met around monetizing your expertise and not just media. Talk me through that a little bit because I know you firmly believe in monetizing expertise.
Absolutely. So I'll give you an example of two quick examples actually, and you can go further if you like. But the very first online product that we tried to launch, and we launched fairly successfully, was I was sitting around thinking like, what do we know how to do really well here? Podcasting. So I was like, okay, let me create an online course to teach people how to podcast. And so I'd become an expert at that point. I'd done X amount. I don't remember the exact amount, but let's call it at least 3,000 interviews at that point. And we created a course around it. And what's interesting is we thought that the monetization from that would be from the course, which it was fairly successful. It wasn't something that we saw was going to be long term, but it was fairly successful. But that was birthed really the podcast agency, and that birthed all that reoccurring revenue and all those other shows that I mentioned that we've launched. That birthed that because some of those initial people that went through that course were like, okay, this is great. The content's great, but you know what? I just need someone to do it for me. Like, I get it. Now I understand. I have the base of knowledge, but I know myself. I need somebody to just do it for me. I'm never going to get in there and edit. I like to record. I want to record. I want that piece. Can you guys do that? So that was one way we monetized it. Another way that we've monetized knowledge is through our personal brand accelerator. So when we think about us as a company, what we've done, I was a financial advisor. Nothing too, no offense to any financial advisors that are watching this, but nothing too glamorous about that one. It's like your local guy, you go in suit and tie. Like, it's not, I would say it's the antithesis or the opposite of sexy and marketable on social media. It's just, I don't care. I mean, it is what it is. You could try and dress it up, but it's not necessarily the case. Through the last 9 years, going on 10 years in this business, we've managed to build my personal brand through some very systematic things. So in reflecting back, it took me a solid year to put together that program. And it's a group coaching program that I lead myself. And that's been a big win for us because we've been able to help some other highly performing professionals and entrepreneurs build their brands through the years now. So that was another way that we monetized, and that's expertise. So I'm not delivering a physical product like with our podcast agency or a book or anything of that nature. I'm delivering knowledge, and that knowledge though is helping people cut down what took me 9+ years to learn and to go through myself, by the way, in my transition in terms of on social media, in the public eye, and the media in general overall. And it's allowing them to compress that time so that now they're getting the same type of result in, call it 1 to 2 years versus 9+. So those are two very specific ways of how we've monetized knowledge.
And I guess what's your top tip for someone that's considering trying to monetize knowledge? They might have knowledge in their business, or they might be, it could be a totally different product area, couldn't it? Like you've done.
Yeah. Well, the first thing is you want to think about who you're targeting, like who's actually going to buy this. Like, who's going to buy this? And you want to see if they actually are willing to exchange money for what you have. Because what I find often is, and I'll give you just a really quick example of, we thought originally that people were going to come to me for finance advice because I'd done that for 14+ years. So we thought this was going to be a financial type platform, right? That wasn't who bought from us. People wanted the media side of things from me. So if I had been like stuck in my ways and my ideas of, no, it has to be this, it has to be that, then I could have been trying to fit that proverbial, square peg in a round hole. But instead, I listened to the market and I listened to what the market wanted to buy specifically from me. Somebody else might have been able to monetize or monetize that knowledge of finance, right? And many people do, and many people will. And even people that are listening to this can do that now. I'm not saying it's a bad niche. I want to be very clear about that. It's not a bad niche. It's not something that people can't do. You can, but if you fall in love with an idea and people aren't paying you for it, I don't sit around questioning it. I open my eyes and say, what are people writing me checks for? And is it something that aligns with my values and what I want to do in this world? And if it checks those two boxes, I'm in, man. Write the check and I'll do the work.
And I guess moving on to leadership and resilience then, you're doing 70 interviews a week. Mm-hmm. How do you maintain focus and energy every day?
Systems. By not having to think about it. My calendars, I'll look at it real quick. My calendar today, I think I have 12. They're already on this calendar, like systems. I'm not claiming that I have this amazing routine and this amazing work ethic and this and that. It's not that. It's just systems. Everything's been designed to where the train is moving, and it's moving so fast that it's hard to get off. And if you can design that, then you're almost, this is going to sound real bad, but it is the way that I do describe it. And speaking of my calling as a motivational speaker and missing it, you're trapped in the success. You're just trapped. You have to do it. Like for me to go and cancel all of these interviews and all this stuff that's on my calendar, like that would be such an emotionally hard toll that for me to show up, do them, and to have some fun and meet some new amazing people, like which sounds better.
How do you carve out time for yourself, though?
I have, so on the personal side of things, I have date night every Monday. That's my thing, myself and my girlfriend. So date night, I make sure to like schedule things. I make sure to keep things different in general. So meaning to make sure that we have a variety of activities, events, like self-care. I have a whole chart that I created that's just kind of like for me and my girlfriend, and that's just like to keep our life, going still, because this is because I care about both personal and I do care about professional. But if I'm just spending time on professional, then there won't be any personal. Like, and that just, life has taught me, right? So that's how I do it. I mean, it's kind of she'll laugh at me because she's like, I don't want to see your chart. It's literally a whiteboard. She's like, I don't want to see your chart. Get away from me. Give me a headache. But I'm like looking at it and I just do it the same. I whiteboard it out, like just like I do in business. That's what makes sense to me in this world.
What do you think you've learned about resilience as a founder then?
Burn, you gotta like, what's that? Like burn the ships, burn the boats, and you go out there and there's no turning back. I mean, you think about like, rightfully or wrongfully, have lived and died by a single idea and kind of beat my head on the wall long enough to where I've become right. But like I don't recommend that for anybody else. Like that's what I've learned and that's been my personal journey, so that my thesis is proving itself correctly. But is that correct information for anybody else? I don't know, but that's been my personal thing. Because if I think about my early days, all of my buddies, all my VC friends, all my finance friends, everything else, the math just didn't make publishing, personal brands, podcasting, the math just didn't work. So it took me 9 years or probably 6 years. And, the last three have been pretty good, but it took me a solid 6 years, but let's call it nine, to where anybody like really, really cares. But, if you have an idea for an invention or something else or this or that, I'm not saying that you want to stay wrong if you can't afford your lifestyle or other things that you have. Like you got to really think about if you want to live and die by an idea, like and what the purpose is behind it. But for me, that's what I've learned.
And I guess, so here's a problem that lots of founders have. When you're the brand or you're the person at the center of that business, how do you avoid becoming the bottleneck? So how do you avoid becoming the bottleneck in your business?
Well, I actually didn't. On first appearance, it may seem like that, but if you go back to the design of it all, I'm not really as important to the brand as it may seem. I drive traffic, is what I do at this point, and I build brand. But let's just say that tomorrow, a tornado takes me away, whatever. I mean, realistically, what would happen is that same money that was spent on producing a show and creating this traffic could easily be taken and diverted to advertising in the traditional sense, and we wouldn't be going after this flywheel that we've been trying to, and all of our reoccurring revenue and everything else like that. It's designed so that I am replaceable. So, and it's also designed so that this is not actually, if you look under the hood, we're not an influencer brand. So, and the reason why we're not an influencer brand, for anybody that may be listening to this, like, oh, but you do this, you do that. No, we're not. If we were, then we would make decisions with our money differently. I'll give you an example. Why we wouldn't invest in 40 plus shows that we have on our podcast network. We wouldn't be doing even podcast production or even publishing for other books. What we would do is we would take every dime that we bring in and we'd reinvest it into advertising and marketing so that everybody in the world knows the name Adam Torres. And then we would grow our social media channels from that to the millions, where we don't have that right now. And in doing that, then we would operate off the entertainment model. So if we were do an influencer brand, it'd be very different. And I feel that in this case, and I know your question in terms of being a bottleneck, then I think I would be, because it would all be pointing towards me. But in this case, we really do function like any other company. Like I'm not doing day to day, like it's operationally on the back end. Like if I go on vacation tomorrow. Nothing happens other than our the content doesn't come out for the interviews. But again, that's in the design of the company.
Okay. And what advice would you give to leaders who feel that they're stuck in the center of their business? That they are the bottleneck. How would you advise them to get out of being that person?
I mean, if it's a mental thing, I mean, there's two different things I think that put people in there. It's mental, they can do things better than everyone else, or it could be financial. Like they just can't afford to hire, depending on what size of the company, they can't afford to hire that first key employee or that first person that's going to help. And those are very hard leaps. Like the first time you hire somebody where you're like, whoa, I actually have to spend some money. This can't be just like a part-time person, or this can't be this, or this can't be that. Like our first executive we hired, oof, I was scared. I'm like, man, this is real money now. Like, and this is a real person, right? And they have a real family, and they have real responsibilities, and they have real, like, that was the first time I kind of like had that gut check of like, wow. And now think about it, like we're driving traffic through me doing interviews. So like when you think about like the pressure of that, now it's not just me and the co-founder. It's like, okay. And our editing or other things like that. Now it's like, whoa, there's somebody like that is really like it sounds weird to say this, but people are raising children off of the content that we create. This pays mortgages, right? Like for me doing these interviews. So that's that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of things. That's a gut check. So for the founders out there that are the bottlenecks, if it's financial, that's one thing to think about it. If it's mental, that's another thing to think about it. Two different answers. If it's mental, I mean, at some point you'll have to just make the decision of either how to work around it. So meaning, are you going to raise capital to hire more people to help you that are going to compensate, that are going to be, for lack of better words, they're going to be able to deal with you? Because you got to pay somebody a lot of money to deal with your headaches that you're going to give them if you're going to be the bottleneck and be really controlling. Either that, or you're going to get inept people that just need a job. But the good people you're not going to get, or they're not going to stay, one of the two, because the good people want to be empowered and they want to feel, good at work, and they want to thrive, and they want to care about what they're doing. But so you'll drive those people away eventually, not immediately, but eventually. And then you'll probably attract and or keep subpar people. Like, and that are willing to deal with your shenanigans. Like that's just the reality of what's going to happen. Like if it's mental, if it's money, that's kind of a little bit trickier. Like that's like make or break time. You got to just decide. I would say the one question I'd ask myself if it's money is like, how fast do you have to grow? Like if you don't have to grow and you have a loyal group of clients, it's okay. You can stay small for longer if you want, assuming you're not raising money or assuming that's not part of your deal. It's okay to stay smaller longer. Like we've done that. Like especially on some of them, when we launch a new product or something else like that, like we'll be like, especially in the early days, like when we first brought on our first couple of podcast clients, we're like, oh, there's a lot of people. If we send out an email, think about it this way. I interview, thousands of people. If we send out one email that says we're launching a podcast agency, how many people are going to reply? A lot. And say like, oh, I've always thought about or wanted to launch a podcast, but are we experts yet? And do we need to like not yet? Like you can go slow, so it's okay.
Yeah, I think that thing about empowering your people is key, isn't it? Empowered people are the most effective people in your business.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, taking feedback from your people around how you are with them is really important, and acting on it. Appraisal should never just be top down. They need to go the other way as well. Otherwise it doesn't work. Just as we're coming to the end, then, Adam, so if listeners take away one thing from this conversation, what should it be?
My one thing I want people to do is I want them to share their story. Like that's it. Like if you're scaling a business, if you're an employee, if you're an executive, if you're a manager, like share your story. So many other people can learn from it. And it doesn't have to be in podcasting. It can be go on a podcast, be interviewed, start a podcast, write a book, like share your story, because these stories and these conversations, this is what like help us all progress in humanity and as a society. And that's my one takeaway. I want everybody to get out there and share their story, because the world can really benefit from it. And if you don't share your story, then somebody else will write your history for you. So I want you to be an active participant in that.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. If listeners want to check in with you or contact you, where should they head to?
Just connect with me on Instagram. Ask Adam Torres. There's a link there if you want to check out any of our content, anything else. And if you have a show idea, a book idea, anything else like that, I'd love to hear new ideas. Just shoot me a DM. Again, it's Ask Adam Torres on Instagram.
Amazing. Thanks so much. Appreciate it, Adam. I'm sure that's been useful for everyone. I personally found it really interesting. So thanks again.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Adam Torres. If there's one thing I took away, it's that scaling isn't always about going faster. Sometimes it's about going deeper. If you've got a story to tell as a founder, creator, or someone figuring it out as you go, don't sit on it, share it. You can find Adam on Instagram at Ask Adam Torres. And for more episodes of Scaling Up Not Giving Up, plus articles and resources for founders, head to my website at richard-lee.co.uk. I'll see you next time.